hello to the small number of people that are not the three of us currently viewing. And Beth, do you prefer Beth or Bethany in
Bethany.
conversation? Bethany is good. Okay. Um, well, thank you uh, for agreeing to do this on such short notice. We kind of threw this together in pretty short order. Um, but yeah, I mean, I figured this might just be a good opportunity for a conversation about things that people who are interested in paleo or already in these community spaces, things that they can do to be part of the solution, I guess. Like they can kind of help lend to making this a more positive environment. So as I am prone to monologuing, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to you three, whichever direction you want to take this.
Oh, but David, we're prone to monologuing too.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
you
We've got
chose
our
the wrong
soapbox.
group of peeps if you don't want
Yeah.
monologues.
That's true. This is a very soapboxy group.
If we all monologue, if we all soapbox, there'll be hopefully some natural equilibrium will take place at some point.
Sure.
Oh yeah. Oh man, where to start though? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
well, I feel like I shouldn't start because of the topic.
If you have something in mind, though, go for it.
I do have something in mind. I think that one major thing that probably we should all be doing is just safe people should be vocal about their safety, and also their people around them should be willing to vouch for who is safe, so that people know who they can rely on in situations where they feel like they're not sure whether they're going to be safe at a conference or in the workplace, etc. I think with the sort of stressful topics that we've been dealing with in paleontology in the last few weeks, community, I think, is the big
Oh yeah.
thing that remedies these sorts of scary things. I think, David, you had talked to us a lot about your sort of long-term goals with Sternberg camps, and I think that
Yeah.
generally speaking, that's the right idea. Is just good people crowd out the bad people, and we do that by basically sticking together and being able to lean on each other.
Sticking together, speaking up, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, helping bring in the next generation of new good people.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. It's, especially right now, it's hard to speak up for a lot of people, I think,
Yeah.
especially, women and minorities in the community. But with everything that's going on, and definitely like all the press that paleo is getting from like the civilian world, as it were, which is shocking to see. I'm like,
Makes us
oh
sound like the
hey,
military.
it does make it come up with something. Normies doesn't sound respectful.
It all sound like
Crazy
cowboys, I
audience
guess we
reach
are.
the past 2
Yeah,
weeks. Crazy audience reach for
it's
paleo.
it's
I
been
will
it's
say
been
that.
crazy.
It's true.
It's so it definitely, there's always historically been hesitancy to speak up in, smaller communities, and with more eyes on paleo than ever,
Yeah.
I feel that people, that have even been considering speaking up, or, would have the courage to do that, might be a little discouraged because of all the
Mhm.
press that's been going on. But that doesn't mean to say that there's only bad players in paleo, because we're trying to speak up and be like, hey, we're still good here. We're fighting, and we're gonna monologue and be so boxy. You're right. You're right, friends.
Eugenia had added an important addition in the chat here too for
Yeah.
anyone monitoring that.
Yeah, and these are good. These are good points. I think social media and it's double-edged sword, obviously, but I think that it's also helped kind of decentralize some of these power structures in
Yeah.
academic spaces where it's not only folks who have like high standing due to their role as a museum curator or a professor or whatever kind of position of authority they have. There's a lot more far-reaching community that can happen through these spaces if people choose to engage with those communities. And I think that there may be something to be said for using those spaces more deliberately as a way to find out where is safe, who is safe in advance. Like let's say you were looking into internships
Hmm.
in different places, and you're in some kind of large paleo Discord or something like that, asking around to folks who have decently sized networks and just get kind of taking a temperature on this stuff may be helpful. But I don't know if you three have any perception of that.
I think that's definitely a great idea, and I think we've actually seen a lot of that going on with some of the groups that we're involved in.
Yeah.
We are lucky, and we have the capability to do that because we've built out these networks. But I just worry for people trying to get into paleo because
Yeah.
they're just trying to get internships for the first time. I know when I was doing that, I would have taken anything, and
Right.
yeah, it's hard because you don't have anybody to reach out to ask if this is a safe space or not.
Well, I
Right.
think that's where we also need to be comfortable talking about these things to
Yeah.
young people that are getting into paleo in a not scary way
Yeah.
that's going to like make them not want to get into paleo, but in such a way that's like there are good people out there, but going into this, there's directions where you have to be cautious. And I think that, like you're not going to receive a lawsuit because just in a word of mouth conversation, you told an undergrad, hey, stay away from Jack Horner or, folks like him.
Yeah.
But I think that warning people early on like that as they get into paleo, I think that's a huge jump for them. I mean, Amy and Megan mentioned in their podcast that when they got into paleo, they thought it was going to be sunshine and rainbows. They thought everybody in paleo was going to be like really good people. And it turns out there are some stinkers, some real stinkers. And I
Yeah.
thought that too when I was, when I was an undergrad,
Yeah.
when I was getting into paleo. I thought
I did too.
everybody was like, like David Polly, because he was my professor and that was my like connection to paleontology directly. And that guy's great. And I thought that was just what paleontology was. And boy, was I heartbroken to find out that wasn't the case. So I think maybe those high expectations need to be a little bit shattered, just to establish some realism, so that people know you don't have to necessarily tiptoe around, but there are people not to lean on.
Adjusted, I would say, rather than like shattered maybe a little bit, maybe
Yeah.
cracked. Because no, everything that you said, like completely relate to that. At the end of the day, we are in paleo because it's something that we love. And so many of us in paleo have, like my story. I decided when I was 3 that this was going to be what happened. So I grew up with that goal, that in mind. So it is really hard. There's a saying in psychology, and it's that it's hard to call out the ones that raised you. And it's why people that are in difficult situations that you might on the outside recognize as something uncomfy, something abusive, they can't see it sometimes, and the rose-colored glasses of paleo need to come off a little bit, because at the end of the day it is a very competitive field. It is a field like any other. My sister-in-law is a physicist, and it's a very tiny community. She invented a laser that runs on gold that like treats Alzheimer's, but there's other people doing that. I'm like, that's wild. But it's like even in that community, they have like these players as well. It's not just because paleo is small, everybody. Doesn't mean that, it's any different than a regular job. They're your coworkers to some extent, and you don't always get along with all of your coworkers because sometimes they aren't great.
I think there's a
I
certain
think the kind of idolizing gets to be where we get into some dangerous territory, as well as
Hero
some of
worship.
some of the fandom elements of paleo, where you have people that make it onto like TV programs and they get a lot of public-facing media, and that can cause us some trouble down the line if they turn out to be ethically dubious individuals.
I kind of want to reinforce that with something that, again, Amy and Megan had brought up on the podcast, which is that a lot of people in paleo, especially people, older folks in paleo from before it was really quite a popular thing, these are people who really grew up as like the losers in their high school. They were not necessarily socially talented. And then they get into paleo, and suddenly they're shot into like the science equivalent of stardom, because this is like
Sure.
That's a good point.
this is that science that this is one of those sciences that people pay real attention to. It's us in space, really.
Yeah.
And so you go
true.
from this nothing, this guy who gets bullied in high school, to being like, like on CNN and having like fans, and that
Right.
does something to a certain type of personality's ego, that I think is not necessarily handled in a healthy way by a lot of, in particular, old white guys.
Yeah. Yes, Steve is bringing up a good point in the comments here too, that he's actually heard a few people say they got into paleontology to be famous, which is such a crazy concept to me. But I've heard this sentiment repeated as well, and I think it's just wild that you would choose to go into a science to become famous. But that's how we end up with some potentially problematic science as well as problematic individuals. Because if you're doing it to be famous, you're not doing it for the science always, and that's
true. Then
where we
they
get
do
into
the
trouble.
sensationalistic
Sensational,
science.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we kind of, with that attitude, which is unhealthy, as just outlined for a number of reasons, but you lose the kind of community, like the scaffolding part of all of this with that attitude. Because science is a team sport, not an individual sport at the end of the day. Even if you're the one on the cover of National Geographic, whether you acknowledge it or not, there's a whole slew of people whose time and intelligence and effort went into supporting whatever it is that you're getting all this attention for.
Yeah.
And so, like, you can basically have somebody be kind of a spokesperson for some research, but the idea that you are like the sole proprietor of, some theropod is unrealistic as well as
some theropod, just a certain some
they do get
theropod.
territorial. It's weird.
I don't want to point specific fingers. I think it's an attitudinal and kind of a cultural issue within paleo.
Only two fingers.
Yeah, only two. I mean, depending on how bird derived they are, it would get down to just one.
Right. Well, the whole Bone Wars thing is inherently damaging and antithetical to science.
Right.
And I like to use Bone Wars as an example of this danger of being overly competitive in science, because sure, they named all of these species, and some of those are really iconic today, but more than the species that stayed valid are the species that turned out to be invalid because the science was rushed. And that's not even mentioning all of the fossils that were destroyed in the process. And those two guys ended up basically penniless and alone at the end of their lives.
Yep.
So did it really matter?
Yeah.
As opposed to being at least penniless early in our lives, which is what the normal
penniless early in your lives, penniless at the end too. But like, hey, at least you're not alone because you got along with people.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But that community support angle, where it's like, if you are a student that's just kind of getting into paleo now, whether it's you're looking at college, you're looking at grad school, understanding that there's a lot of different kinds of little sub-communities within this space, and that you're not locked into any one specific one forever. You can shift around. And that's not saying you should forget where you came from or like leave your friends behind or anything like that. But if you start to realize that a space is maybe a little unhealthy or unhelpful, you can make new friends and you can kind of shift around into healthier spaces. That is something that you can make a deliberate point of doing, but it may involve some growth. I think this is another thing that is underspoken of, underappreciated, is that the best way for you to ascend in a healthy way in these professional spaces is to be willing to admit when you understood something poorly or incompletely and to grow from that.
Yeah. I mean, Max, you helped me in that kind of situation before, of kind of helping me see, certain people in the community for who they are and help me get out of a bad situation. And that's why it's so important to still make friends within paleo, because I do know it's been said to me, like last year I had my first student, so for the last semester of 2025, and being around undergrads for the first time in a little while, admittedly, to be around undergrad students.
Starts off feeling a little bit like babysitting.
Yeah, it's wild, but they started saying things of, oh, I don't really like making friends in paleo because it's so competitive, and that mindset, I don't want that to become more pervasive because of all of what's going on. Making friends in paleo is so important, not only for like in a scientific lens of you could be working on a project for 3 years and there's something glaring, even if it's minor, that just having a friend look over and be like, oh hey, like that, this museum has that in collections, do you want to go see it? That's so helpful. And paleontologists, I love my husband, but he doesn't know exactly like what to say sometimes when I'm like, oh, XYZ, there's this problem, there's this kind of, all these forms, all of this like scientific issue, having someone that can relate, that's important. That's again how any field works. Having someone that knows what you're talking about is very helpful, and they can help you. That's the point of having friends in your profession.
Yeah, I think that's why it's like super, super important, especially to emphasize to young people and people getting into paleo for the first time, that like not these bad players in paleo, they're louder than all the good players, but the good players,
they're so loud.
But the good players outnumber them by a lot. There are so many more good people in paleo than not, and building those communities and building those friendships. I mean, God, the number of things we've been able to do just because we met somebody random and then that thing led to another connection and then we ended up on some cool adventure or on a paper. I mean, it's just endless. And I think for the vast majority of the time, people in paleo love to help each other out, whether it's science or otherwise. I mean, I
think that you end up with two mentalities, and both kind of go back to an aspect of evolution. I think a lot of those highly competitive people think of it as like, well, survival of the fittest, do or die, arms race. But we're humans. We're a social animal. You are fighting your own evolution if you're not being cooperative. So quite frankly, we would not have survived this long if we had not been cooperative for the last 300,000 years. Surely we've failed in that sometimes, but you're always cooperating with somebody, and the more people that you're cooperating with, honestly, the more that you're going to get done. Humanity likes to tote all of this stuff that we've achieved, but we didn't achieve it until we started cooperating with more and more and more people. And the truth is, the more cooperative you are, the more you and everybody are going to succeed together.
Yeah, I always say the more collaboration you've got going on, the better the science is. And that applies to like everything.
It's in your evolution. I mean, for God's sake.
Absolutely.
Just seeing if we have any other folks over here in the comments. Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes we would do well to trade about, I don't know, like 25% of anyone's ego for an equivalent amount of empathy. Like, that feels like a transaction that would really benefit us widely.
100%.
Not saying all your ego. Some amount of ego is important because it provides confidence that allows you to take at least moderate risk on ideas that might not work out, and that's important. But sometimes if you're getting overly self-centered with these things, like you need to be the star of the show. I got into paleo to be famous, that kind of thing. Everyone's going to lose out. Other people may lose out from benefiting from your insights, and you're definitely going to miss out from benefiting from the insights of other people, as well as just the community support of those individuals. I guess you're just going to be a psychologically healthier individual, as you were saying. So I think that's, I don't know. Obviously, if we can get people to sit with themselves and be introspective, we could solve all kinds of problems in the world. But I think for paleo in particular, in this community, that may be something where it's like, let's dial this other thing down a little bit and understand that we go further together than alone.
Yeah. And I think addressing kind of one of the elephants in the room is that paleo as a community right now, there's a lot of people that are uncomfortable.
Yep.
And that's kind of this at the forefront of, while we talk about all of these great things and these positive aspects of paleo that we think should be highlighted, we are not blind to the fact that that's not how people are feeling right now. And we are feeling that as well, just to make that very clear. But like the four of us, it is important for us to talk about the good experiences, because really, we can't let the bad ones drown it out. And it's difficult. Every single day it seems that I wake up and something else is like, oh, really? Another? But then I go to the lab and I get to say, a different, another, like it's this fascination, this great, the things that I love in paleo are still there. The reasons I got into paleo, because I didn't get into it to be famous. I didn't really have, like, I had Steve Irwin and he was the goat, but I didn't go in like with a, Jurassic Park kind of idea of what, a paleontologist would be. So it's the fun and the beauty is still there. This is a very human, unfortunate aspect of what's happening, but why let them win? Because if we go away, if we're quiet and we let certain parts of the community die, well, that's it, and that means that no one is going to have the positives if we let the negatives outshadow them. So we're aware that there's tension in the community. We're not blind, and we are experiencing it.
Yeah, that's an absolutely a great point to bring up. I mean, I completely agree with you, though. Like, I try, and it is a conscious effort every day. I try really hard to focus on the positive things. And these last few weeks, it has been very difficult. But you're right. Every day I go to school, and I teach some young undergrad who's interested in paleo, and they get super excited, and I see the light in their face, and I go, yes, this is what it's all about. You guys are the future, and you're going to do so good. And it makes me so happy. And then I get back on the internet and I go, huh. But, we'll forget about that. But no, we're very aware of what's going on. We're all very keyed into it. And we're just, a few people sitting here trying to make things better. And there are many, many others who we know. We're all out there trying to do
we have a huge community.
Oh my God, it's
people.
massive.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Great people.
I want to talk about this last comment that's in here, because I think it speaks to.
Oh yeah.
Please don't take this as an attack. I think it speaks to a misunderstanding of how ascendancy into positions of power works. So you said that they've been paleoanalysis. You said that they've been given the highest place of privilege for decades. And like, if you're talking about biases in the community and who kind of gets promoted and who typically finds themselves in these higher of their jobs, sure. But I think there's also an element of the people who are maybe more likely to think that they have some right to make other people uncomfortable or to touch other people without permission or any of these other things. They tend to also be people who would be seeking out authority or power. They're pursuing positions where they can have higher levels of influence. And so it's not necessarily only the structure. The structure supports it and facilitates it, but you also have personality elements that mix in with that to create these kind of perfect storms of bad behavior that goes unchecked. And I think there's two different elements. There's an incentivization structure for people with these personalities, and then there's also understanding and disentangling what kind of people we are allowing to move up in the ranks and how we're checking those behaviors along the way. Like punitive effects, looking into ethics violations, all that, that's an important part of this. But the saying, like, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think that there's a component of this where we need to take a real hard look at where we can grind out some ounces of prevention.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just to kind of bounce off of that, it's an unfortunate thing that I am in a position where I have to say this. It's not just the people that have been around for decades and are at these high, because, the person that I've primarily, this group that I've had the most horrible experiences with are younger than I am. So it starts everywhere. The fortunate, part of someone not being decades established is that you can make sure that with the right community like we have here, they don't get to establish themselves having that behavior. That's fixable. What our eyes are on now, understandably, are these people that are well known, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't just been happening. And over the years, there's people that have been working to stop it, and change has been made, although it's slow. Don't kind of like toss it out. All those changes helped me very recently. So that's one reason that I'm speaking, to this, is because it's not just up here. It's also at the same level that you are, the level below, going and going. But it's a snowball effect that as a community, we have a power to stop. Like build, I don't ski. I don't know what those little things are that stop the snow, but we can make one, whatever they are. Whatever.
Oh, I'm not sure what that's called. Yeah.
I don't know. I was watching the Olympics like 2 hours ago.
Completely.
That's all I think about.
Unfortunately, your situation's not the only one that I. Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you start talking. Your situation's not the only one that I've heard of someone closer to our age being a problem. I am glad that it seems to be exceptionally more rare in our generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I just want to completely agree with what you said about.
Yeah, same.
We've already started creating this community, and we can use that community to push back against that sort of behavior for sure. Yeah. And I know that there are some of the, again, coming back to some of those older people, they've been very slow to condemn that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
But certainly, as we start to take the reins of this field, we can choose what we want to tolerate and what we won't.
And I think a really important piece of this puzzle of trying to make paleo a better place for everyone is going back to underrepresented communities and people don't feel as comfortable speaking up, and oftentimes it's not safe for them to speak up. So the people who are in power, who do hold those positions, who are doing the right thing, need to be calling out the people who aren't doing the right things. I mean, I don't know. We talk about this a lot. We always say it as like, if you are in a position where people are going to listen to you, make sure you use that for good.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Call people out. Yeah.
There's a phrase, a quote that I saw the past few months that goes, we have a lack of ruthless people with good intentions. And I think that speaks to, we need more people who want to see positive change, deliberately seeking out ways that they can have greater influence to see those changes made real. So oftentimes folks who have good intentions, they're doing the work. They're kind of in this day to day, and they're maybe not quite as concerned with accruing more influence for themselves personally in such a way. It's not a deliberate thing. Maybe it happens on accident over the course of a career, but it's maybe not something they're seeking the way that some people are. And I think having that attitude of, I am vigorously pursuing the positions where I can have a magnified impact on these good changes that I would like to see.
Yeah,
which means playing the game. Like if you're going to ascend in these communities and in professional fields so that you will have more influence and more ability to affect change, that means that you kind of have to play some of these power dynamic games, which some people understandably don't want to, because it can be a little frustrating and, I don't know, icky sometimes. But at a certain point, it is necessary.
Fight for the good of everybody as hard as those folks fight to get on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
be the nasty woman that historically when women and underrepresented communities speak out, they are made to feel uncomfortable. Like that is the purpose. That
Deliberately, yeah.
it being so hard, that's by design, because what you want when you are a bad player in power is for the people that are not in power, that have these more progressive views and more want to incorporate more into the community. You don't want them to feel like they can talk about it. That's the point of being totalitarian at the top, unfortunately. But this is a community, this is a field, this is not a we're not in a government that we can't, within paleo, whether we're in a government, take a side, but we are in a position where we are the voices, we can use them, and it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but we haven't gotten to the place, I think, that we and so many other people in paleo, we're not at the place we want to be, so we have to start speaking up. It's going to be uncomfortable at first, but to get from here to that nice place, uncomfortable, that's where we need to start, and it'll get easier.
And the more of us who do it all at once, the faster it'll get easier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a difference here. There's a pop culture reference to say what I said earlier a different way. Just from Batman Begins, Rachel Dawes, where she's like, "What hope do the rest of us have if the good people do nothing?" And we don't need to get into like the ethics of Bruce Wayne and Batman. That's a whole different kettle of fish. But I think that the I don't know, the spirit of that stands pretty well on its own.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily just mean being a bomb thrower in public spaces. Like if you go in and just come in swinging, people are not going to trust you to be level-headed and to work in those professional spaces where you can gain more influence and get people to trust you to be a reliable contributor, even if the thing that you're trying to do is reshape parts of that power system. And that can be a tough thing. That can be a tough line to walk because it can make you feel a bit like you are part of the problem in the course of trying to help solve it. And that's a learned maturity, I think, that we also don't do a good job of teaching our younger community members things like how power works in general.
Media literacy.
And I think we benefit. I think we benefit from training them in that so that the ones who want to maybe have a positive impact know how to do that if they so choose.
Mm. Yeah.
Trying to think of how, like, a good structure for going about doing that on a large scale.
I mean,
Cool.
the social media work that you three in particular are doing can take that form. Among
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think exposing people overtly to the issue in a way that indicates that there are people who intend to fight it, i.e. us. In the last couple of weeks, I've definitely made several posts myself expressing my anger and intent to rally against certain behaviors. And I think that if people are more aware that is something that other people are also angry and wanting to act about, then they might be more comfortable standing up themselves.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about positive, like proactive behaviors that people can take, as opposed to just condemning. Condemning is a piece of the puzzle, and it's important because actions need to have consequences if they are harmful. But I think also telling people, like, remember, you're part of this group. You're not only relying on these other people who you might be intimidated by, who, if you find out that somebody's a bad actor, you're like, well, I can't say anything because they'll torpedo my career. But you can take proactive, positive steps in addition to just being reactive and condemning bad behavior and talking about like this full breadth of, I guess, prior action versus post action.
I think it's also important to point out that sometimes it is easier to talk to someone who is at the same like level or space in their career because, you know, if someone makes you uncomfortable and you tell a friend, like this person made me uncomfortable, sharing that then does like make, okay, well, at least one person is aware of this and they will approach that situation different because it's those small things when you feel like you've had some sort of like adversarial or just super inappropriate interaction with somebody in the community. It's very hard to speak up, but you can start just by telling people in the community if that is what you're more comfortable with. Going straight to reporting, you know, historically is very difficult just from a psychological standpoint, and in practice, it can be very difficult and hard to navigate. Sometimes just spreading that word, being the first step, that can really immediately start change, get people, and unfortunately, that's what women have been doing for years. Just all of these women in paleo groups that I'm in, it's sometimes I'll just reference them and be like, oh no, I've heard that name before, and go in there. Whether it's, you know, there's a sheet of paper that says this is what, you know, actions have been taken against. No, sometimes it's just someone said, hey, like this probably is not the PI for you because this is the behavior that they have engaged with in the past and it doesn't align with your values. Not even necessarily like you will be unsafe, all of that, but people can make you uncomfortable without you being unsafe. That's also very important to know. We're talking about the state of paleontology, all the things that are in the news. That's not the only reason to be uncomfortable. If you feel that you're in an adversarial, you know, situation, speak up. It doesn't have to be in the criteria that's been in the news. You are valid if you feel threatened, no matter what the situation is. You are more than like valid to speak up about that. It doesn't have to be about all of the things that are on the news.
Yeah, providing somebody with the first step in community solidarity, if they bring something to you that they're just feeling weird about or uncomfortable about, and being like, you're just listening to them. Like, that's huge, as folks have been saying. So yeah, full agree on.
I also want to follow up on what Bethany was saying to just bring up that there are a lot of people in paleo that are not overtly socially skilled, and I have definitely witnessed incidents where people have unintentionally made other people comfortable because they just
That's true.
they don't know how to carry themselves necessarily because, you know, certain disorders and whatnot. I think that if you're not sure, I think in some cases, if you really don't know what's going on, like if this is really that uncomfortable situation, or if that person is just, you know, being, you know, having a social struggle, maybe we can even just normalize asking. In the case of paleo, given the neurodivergence in our field,
or at the very least, asking friends or other people.
Yeah. Do you know, like, hey, do you know so and so?
How do you
just
interpret this
yeah.
Because I've definitely seen it be like, oh no, they did not mean that bad.
Yeah.
That was that was just an unfortunate way to approach.
We check stuff with each other all the time. We'll be at conferences and I'm like, did you perceive that as really weird, or was that just me? And you're like, no, or and it's a good cross reference because sometimes you're just in the wrong headspace for something too. But yeah, always check with people. It's better to talk about it and say something than to say nothing. Always.
Yeah.
Help spread the word. The more we spread the word, the less these actions will prevail.
Thing, honestly, like maybe the whisper network is really important. Maybe it needs to be a little louder.
And I think it's getting louder. It just takes time. Yeah.
Yeah, there are very real concerns about liability issues that unfortunately get weaponized, because you have people who can do something like hire a lawyer and go after people who may be saying very true bad things about them, but they can manipulate some elements of the legal system in order to make people to silence people. And that's obviously the best way to fight that is documentation and community. And if something happens, like reporting it quickly, if possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't have to make space for someone to be negative is another important thing to point out. Like there's all this, you know, a wonderful, you know, saying that's been pretty like all over for the past like couple years of like making space, holding space. Well, if someone in the situation of some people have the ability to fight the law even when all these things are true, you still don't have to make space for them in your direct, like you don't. It's you and your feelings are valid, and just because the system isn't supporting the overall like very visible aspects of it, you still in paleo, we don't have to make space for that. Don't make space for it.
You don't have to leave the paper with that person.
No, and it can even be as simple as like, if you encounter them at a conference, if they walk up to a group that you're in, walk away.
Yeah.
Like, let them know what you think without telling them what you think. Be like, exactly.
Walk away.
You can close the circle. You can talk.
Anybody want to come with me?
You can respond to each other too quickly for them to get a word in. Like I mean, yeah, there's ways.
Plenty to do without. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I think I've seen arguments also about like, well, they do this good science, or they get funding, or they're this big name, and all this other stuff. And I think it's important to have a very clear stance that like there's so many people looking for jobs in these spaces who are very smart and very hardworking and just as capable as anyone else. And for any number of reasons, they didn't get the job or they haven't gotten to that point yet. And for every bad actor that's out there that's causing problems, I would wager there's half a dozen people that could easily replace them and do just as good, if not better work without being gross and problematic. So like that whole argument structure is useless and if not counterproductive in my mind.
Absolutely. There are just a plethora of brilliant people in the field. I mean, it's endless. There's so many talented, amazing people out there.
Well, it's like everybody is smart basically. So like just work with the people that are also good.
Right.
Yeah, I see a comment from Adrian that I want to. So is it fair to accommodate people who make you uncomfortable though? If someone makes you uncomfortable and your friends like them, you still don't have to put yourself in that. But I think especially for the younger generation, I really want to like hit home. If you're uncomfortable, there's a reason. If like, you know, Matt and Max had mentioned, you check in with other people and they're like, oh, they didn't mean it that way. If it continues to bother you, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Like there's ways around it. Even if, you know, you're writing a paper on you know, XYZ and they really have a lot of, you know, experience in XYZ. What's really cool about paleo is that they're probably not going to be the only person. So you can look elsewhere, even if your friends are like, oh, well, this is a great avenue. If it's not right for you, don't force yourself. You don't have to put yourself and accommodate people that make you uncomfortable, even if everyone else is. You have free will, and what we need to do with that free will now more than ever is preserve ourselves, make sure we're doing good, have a check-in with yourself, and if that's not something you want, we leave, which is easier said than done. I know that I struggled with that for a very long time, but my life has been so great since I did that. And I'm just so jazzed that it happened.
Yeah, there might only be two people who study Oreodonts, but you can still choose between those two people.
You can just roll the dice.
Find an example.
So there may also be an audience contingent here who, let's say, has had, and I'm not picking, this is not about anyone, this is a hypothetical, who's maybe had some moment of introspection, or maybe over the past couple of weeks, and is realizing that maybe they have done at least some even small thing that was harmful or counterproductive in some way. And some people may know that they did that. They may not have spoken up, they may not have said anything, but they were at least witnesses. There's some reputation building there. So would any of you have any advice for basically like somebody who's had that flare of introspection? I don't know if rehabilitating is the right word, that might be too strong, but like pursuing doing better as an individual.
Yeah,
you have to mean it.
Yeah, I think
Sure, that's a good point. Yep.
Yes, it has to be serious, but I think if we don't make room for that, then we're part of the problem too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if we don't give people a chance to do what's right, especially when, you know, maybe they didn't know that they were contributing to the problem originally, especially in cases like that, I think, you know, educating people, watching them prove that they are going to do the right thing, and then having them stick to it, I think that's valid.
Let Darth Vader kill the Emperor.
Yeah.
This is just I've loved all of the references, and I'm just, David, I was laughing.
So
My thesis was actually on DC in the Batverse. So I'm like,
Oh, there we go.
I was like, I have this huge like paper off to the side that's like 25 pages about that. So we
awesome.
could later.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah, debate that. We could.
I read The Psychology of Batman some years ago, and that's the best I've got as far as my studying of the subject, I think.
So I'd win. Yay.
I think Steve makes a fair point in the
Yeah,
comments
that's
too.
where I was
Like
gonna
it
go
does
next.
depend on the nature of the offense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are some that should never be forgiven.
It's definitely easier to come back from words than like physical actions.
Words or inaction. Like, let's say you saw something happening, you didn't, you know.
Right.
Say
That's
something
certainly
wrong.
something that you can come back from. You can just do right the next time.
That's a great that I hadn't really even, my brain hadn't been there about like in action, if in, you know, you're doing this introspective kind of review since all of this came to light. In action. Yeah,
sorry,
go for it. Go.
For some reason, I thought you were done talking. I realized that was my mistake. You continue.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was just like that doesn't necessarily make you a bad person because you might not have known that that is something that you should have spoken up about. And now that you know, like in the future, if you see that you can act, inaction when you don't know is not bad. Inaction when you do, that's something completely different. If it is safe to act and you choose not to, that is very different than what we are saying of you know, giving someone the chance once they've been educated on something. But you know, what we've seen in the news is not something that you can come back from, and it is not something that we are going to like let like
that's not
too long.
Not being advocated for at all. That's
yes, I know. It's just I was looking at the comments of it said the things you've seen in the news is not stuff that you can come back from. Absolutely, you are super
100%.
super duper correct, and there's a lot of anger underneath this facade on that. Not gonna lie.
We're smiling.
We're smiling. It's
but we're upset.
But I think in terms of a lot of people who have said problematic things, I think if they can demonstrate properly that they have changed their views, like seriously, like I know a lot of people who in high school were like just outright bigots, and they grew up to become just avid allies to you know, as many people as they could be, and I think that they should be allowed to do that. But if you've spent years making people feel so unsafe that they can't even go to a scientific conference, that's a much different thing.
Well, and I think there's something to be said about like if you're being introspective, you're gonna turn around, you know, your actions, start doing the right thing. There's something to be said for making amends. But you need to be aware that if you're going to try to reach out to people you may have made feel uncomfortable at some point or another, you need to be okay with them saying, do not ever speak to me. And being okay with knowing that you will never have their forgiveness, but that you can still go out there and try to do the right thing from now on. Like, don't take that as a setback. Take that as okay, now I need to go do better.
Yeah. And if you manage to get feedback, from somebody in any of these spaces you're working in, and they tell you, hey, that thing you did wasn't cool, and that might be a really light way of putting it depending on the thing, but if you get genuine feedback from somebody basically saying like that wasn't good and you did not do that again, don't let that be an affront to your ego. Take a step back. If this is somebody, especially if this is somebody that you know, whose opinion you at least have some amount of trust in, take some time with whatever that feedback was and really think about how you want to be perceived by your peers who you may have never really interacted with before. Your reputation may go much further out than you know, and you want to make sure that you are blessed with some amount of constructive feedback, even if it feels bad in the moment. I'm not that kind of person. I wouldn't do that kind of thing. But you did, and you should not do it again. You should consider yourself lucky to have gotten that feedback and try to learn from it as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, and if how it was taken was not your intent, but you double down, that's going to make it look like that was your intent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also not unlimited, like giving someone unlimited opportunities. That also clear. Like once you've clarified something and they've acknowledged that they've heard, you know, what the issue was, and they're like, okay, if they continue to make those, like, you don't have to give them another chance, and you shouldn't. Like, if it's like slightly correctable, you might be able to say, oh, okay, like this, really don't, but there is not unlimited chances. When you give someone unlimited chances.
Yeah, you set boundaries.
Yeah. Boundaries. What a loaded. That can be really hard. It can be so hard.
It can be really hard.
Keep those boundary lines solid. Yeah. Yeah.
And at a certain point, that's self-preservation. Like if you have, I don't know, you have like a conference buddy or somebody that is in your same kind of cohort, and you start realizing that this person is just not helping themselves or anyone else, backing away slowly. Like you don't have to save them from themselves. You just back away slowly from that situation.
Yeah.
The old Irish goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, there's folks who I knew some a little bit further along, I think, than you all are in age and career progress. And there's folks who I knew when I first started going to SVPs who I haven't seen in a decade. And just because you start out around somebody doesn't mean that you are stuck with them forever. On the flip side of that, sometimes people do stick around for a very long time. If they're problematic, you want to separate yourself from that person as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
See, so, and you had some. But yeah, so one of the points that was brought up in the chat by Enya was patterns of behavior over decades is a different issue, just for anyone else that may have missed that. And that's, yeah, there's a whole separate reckoning component of this where it's not just real-time behavior correction, but maybe this wasn't dealt with the way it needed to be at the time, and it has led to a kind of a cultural poisoning or that maybe is a bit more loaded terminology, but it's led to lingering negative effects through making certain kind of behaviors seem fine and allowable when they really need to be nipped in the bud more directly.
Yeah.
And Eugenia made a really good point that people can become problematic over time. That's certainly true as well. People that you once trusted can
become problematic.
Turn to the dark side.
Yeah, turn to the dark side.
Oh god, I'm gonna turn this into a Star Wars thing. Shifting baseline.
Shifting baseline.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
that can definitely happen. Yeah, and I think, when somebody has been problematic for decades and decades and the systems put in place on a larger scale are not solving the problem and are not, for lack of a better word, punishing these people for their actions, that's where we can come in and at least socially punish it. You know, don't talk to them, don't invite them to things, don't be on papers, all the stuff we've been saying, call them out. Like, everything we've been saying can act as another form of correction when systems that are in place are failing.
And it's worked in the past.
It has.
Yeah, it's worked in the past when people felt like appropriate action wasn't being taken. They stepped up, made sure there was no space for certain individuals, and you know, since there's no space, they can't be there. Perfect.
Exactly.
Right. You basically take the oxygen, the oxygen out of the room.
Correct.
Well, we've got about a minute left. Does anybody have any last points they want to share? If folks have anything in the comments that they'd like to ask or comment on before we wrap this little get together up? My apologies to folks who are just showing up now.
I think I would like to throw out there that, like, if anybody has an experience that they want to, I don't want to speak for all of us, but like, if you have an experience that you want to come to somebody with, we are voices, people who will listen, and you can reach out to us online or in person or whatever.
Yeah.
Because
we're happy to act as a line of support for anybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely.
We want to see this. We want to see this better paleo community. We're not just, you know, vomiting words. We want to take action. So if we can help you in any way, let us know.
Yeah. Yeah, the last thing I was going to say is that a lot of people in any career space, what have you, they have power that they're given by a collective of other individuals in that space. And that power can be taken away by enough people in that space as well. So just keep that in mind, is that collective action and individual action, but collective action can be very impactful. And just because somebody has a lot of power doesn't mean that you have none.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're all stronger together.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
All right. That's my last pop culture reference.
Thanks, everyone, for coming. I don't know. We'll see how the next few weeks and months go. Maybe we'll do another one of these. We'll see. But thanks, everyone, for coming by tonight. Thanks to everyone for participating. And good luck out there. We'll catch you all later.
Thanks. See you guys.
Yeah.